Hello and welcome to episode 175 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. As always, joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva, and win totals are up. Yes, that's right. We are now free to fire away at exactly how good we think teams will be this season in the simplest form. How many games will they win? For this, we are honored to be joined by an old friend of the show. You know him from FantasyLabs.com. You know him from Action Network. It is, of course, the great Chris Raybon. Chris, how's it going, buddy?
Adam, Evan, thanks for having me. Miss you guys. Pumped to talk some NFL with you. Let's get it popping. Let's get this money.
Let's get it. Evan, what's going on today, buddy?
What's going on? I always love talking ball with Chris Raybon. Longtime fantasy analyst, but he's really veered hard into the sports betting arena over the past couple of years. I think he's done a great job. I listen to his show every Thursday/Friday with Stuckey on the Action Network, and they crush it. And let's do this. All
right. On today's show, we're going to talk through, a dozen teams or so in the context of their win total. And I know it seems early for this, right? Today's April 6th. We haven't even had the NFL draft yet. It seems early, but of course, you all know that the best time to bet, at least if you're sharp, the best time to bet is typically as soon as the lines come out. And if you wait until July or August to get to these win total lines, well, a lot of the lines we talk about today are going to be long gone. So we wanted to break this down as soon as possible. All right. The first thing I want to ask you guys about is this 17-game schedule. I'm kind of still digesting it, how it's going to play out, what's going to happen. But I do think it's a really big change. Obviously, in terms of win totals, we can adjust for each team playing, a 6% or whatever longer schedule. But I think there's some softer stuff here, i.e. resting players, i.e. older teams. I think it makes a difference as you go in there. So, Evan, let's start with you. What do you think about a 17-game schedule and how you think about win totals in the context of that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge initially, even for the sports book as well. I mean, we're going to be kind of feeling it out together. The prospect of a team just being able to eke out like a 9 and 8 season, like the Vikings. We're going to talk about the Vikings. Their win total is at 8.5. Just seems easy on paper. But then I think you make a good point toward the end of the season. Some of the more dominant teams, could this end up actually costing them a win at the end of the season because they might be likelier to rest in week 18. Week 18, which sounds weird to say. Might they even rest for week 17 and 18 if they're able to, come out the gates and win 12 or 13 within their first 15, 16 games. So I think that those are things that we need to contend with. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's the thing I kind of look at is the teams that are top heavy, the teams that have a lot of contract tied up in their high-end players, teams that are dependent on their high-end players. Because I think depth is going to be just, obviously a little bit more important this year. You have that extra game. I think Mike Clay was just talking about how, no starting running back over the last couple of seasons has made it through a full season. Teams like the Titans, the Panthers, you think about them, very dependent on running backs for their offense to be running on full strength. And then also it's interesting that, so when you break it down by percentages, if you project it out, a 9-7 team at that winning percentage, if you extrapolate that to 17 games, they're at 9.6 wins. And then a 7-9 team projects to 7.4. So a winning team should still be, they kind of have it, that little lean, towards that extra win. Whereas if you're a 7-9 team, you're just a tiny bit less likely to get that 8th one than you are to just be, 7-10. So I thought that was interesting that there's kind of still that breaking point right around 8 wins, where if you were a 9-7 team in a 16-game schedule, you would project closer to 10 than to 9, and vice versa for a 7-win team.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Obviously, as you expand a sample size, you reduce the variance. So good teams are going to look better, in theory at least, as they play more games, and bad teams are going to look worse. They'll get exposed more. You can't just get lucky as the sample size grows. But we are only talking about one game more. But so, yeah, I don't want to put too much emphasis. I just thought that it's interesting for sure to think about. So
one more thing before sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to mention, though, one thing that is going to be interesting is that, no more, there'll probably be more fans in the stands. And because of that 17 game schedule, you do have now, half the teams with 9 home games and half the teams with 9 away games. So that's also something to keep in mind. And as we go through these, I'll kind of highlight like that extra game for each team and who it's against and whether it's on the home or road, because that can kind of make or break some of these win totals. We're kind of really searching for value here.
Yep, for sure. Okay. What we're going to do here is we're just going to go through each of our leans on win totals and talk through them, debate them, disagree. We'll see what happens. We'll start with Silva's that he submitted here. First one, Evan, Bills over 10.5 minus 118. Obviously, it's a lot of games for the Bills to win, but man, they were so impressive last year. Make the case for Bills over 10.5 minus 118.
Yeah, I saw it at minus 110 on DK Sportsbook last night, actually.
You moved the line. You told somebody, they moved it to 118 on you. Somebody, the word is out.
So, I mean, I think 10.5 is very, very doable. I thought that 10.5 was doable for them last year. What did we get them at last year? Like 8.5?
Oh, yeah.
But I thought that they were like a 12-win team last year, and that's exactly what they were. They're bringing back everybody that's notable. They're bringing back Brian Daboll, who should have gotten a head coaching job. Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier arguably should have got another shot at a head coaching gig. They're bringing back their entire offensive line. John Brown is the biggest loss on offense, but they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, and Gabriel Davis, I think, is ready for a role improvement. And I think that they will be better on defense. They were a little bit disappointing, actually, defensively last year, but they're so well coached. And they have plenty of talent. I think that Matt Milano struggled with a hamstring injury throughout the season. Tremaine Edmonds didn't take a big leap, but I think that he has a lot of room for improvement in the middle of that defense. And linebackers are highlighted in that defense, the athleticism of those guys in the middle of the defense. And they're still really strong in the secondary. So 10.5 wins in a 17-game season, absolutely Buffalo Bills. I think they're Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, I have no problem with this whatsoever. I like the Bills. I think they're going to be awesome. These big win totals, going over on them scares me a little bit because it's a little bit more fragile to injuries. But yeah, I have no problem with it. This one didn't stick out to me as an over or an under. What do you think about the Bills, Raybon?
Yeah, I'm kind of in your boat a little more than Adam than you, Evan. With these double-digit win totals, I am a little bit more cautious unless I just love it, and I do love the Bills coaching staff. I think that's what really gives them their edge, and you even see it in the development of a guy like Josh Allen as a franchise cornerstone. But looking at their schedule on the road, you have Tampa Bay, Kansas City, New Orleans, Tennessee, and then of course the 2 division games against New England and Miami. So there's a chance they could lose, 5 or 6 road games just out of that bunch. And then their extra game, it is at home, which is good, but it's at Washington, which is tough. They play Pittsburgh, another tough, scrappy defense. They did beat them last year. They play Indy. So it's a really tough schedule because, of course, they win the AFC East last year for the first time in forever. It's not the Patriots. So that is something I'm kind of looking at that, if gun to my head, I would probably bet the under just because it's double digits. And I think the schedule is tough. But at the same time, I'm a big fan of their coaching. So kind of right in the middle for me.
Okay. Let's move to the Texans. Evan is on Texans under 4.5 minus 110. Let me give you the latest news here on Deshaun Watson. There now have been 22 sexual misconduct lawsuits filed against Deshaun Watson. I believe all of those are civil cases, but last Friday, there was one criminal complaint. And so once you get the criminal complaint going, I'm no lawyer, don't call me Mike Floyer or anything like that. But once you start getting criminal complaints, I think it's more likely that Roger Goodell steps in. Now, if Deshaun Watson's going to play even 12 games this year, 13 games this year, I think he's just so good. He can will this expansion level team to over 4.5 wins. So that's what concerns me. Evan, I know, Evan, you think that they can stay under even with Deshaun Watson, though. Again, this is the lowest win total in the entire NFL. I know we talked about this plenty already, Evan, but what's your latest on the Texans under 4.5 minus 110?
Yeah, it doesn't look good for Deshaun Watson right now. And I actually wonder if the Texans are going to end up having to release him. I don't, I'm like you though. I'm not out here trying to pretend to be a legal analyst or anything like that, but it doesn't look good for him and they've got nothing else. So I think that even if, they're worse than they were last year.
Oh yeah.
They released JJ Watt, didn't even try to trade him. let go of Will Fuller. This team they're awful. I mean, they are just god awful. And it looks like they're going to be playing without their best player in all likelihood, maybe for a majority, if not the entire 2021 season.
Yeah. Raybon, do you have any read on the Watson situation, and how can we handle this Watson situation with regards to futures and stuff like that?
So I'm just going to try to use context clues, because I'm like you guys, I don't really know the full legal situation, and I don't think anyone does. But, the Panthers were a team that was, reportedly, targeting him hard, and they kind of pivoted to Sam Darnold. And that kind of, it kind of tells you something. And then also, I mean, we don't know exactly how soon or how early Texans brass had word of, these legal situations, and, could that have influenced, the treatment of Watson over the offseason? Could they have kind of, could that have explained the about face where, he was supposed to be heavily involved with the coach and the GM, and it kind of all of a sudden went left. So there are a lot of question marks. And I mean, I have the list of their additions in front of me, and it's kind of comical. Philip Lindsay, okay, Mark Ingram, Chris Conley, Andre Roberts, Chris Moore, Dante Moncrief, Ryan Izzo, Marcus Cannon, Cole Toner, Justin Britt, Malik Collins, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Christian Kirksey, Nate Orchard, Tabir Thomas, Terrence Mitchell, Terrence Brooks, Cameron Johnston. I mean, like, they're no difference makers, like in this group, and they lose Fuller, they lose JJ Watt, Bernard McKinney, like they lost high-end players, they lost solid players, and they added mostly, below 50th percentile type talent to fill out the roster. So yeah, I think this could be a disaster. And the only thing they got going for them, they were 4-12 last year. They weren't quite that bad. Their Pythagorean win total was 6.2, so they underperformed by about 2.2. Usually teams do regress. Watson, if he plays, I think that's a possibility, but I'm with Silva. It doesn't look good right now. Everything you look at, and this roster is just ugly.
Yeah, I mean, to be
those skill players that you named off look like some of my old abandoned dynasty rosters.
Right, like 2013.
Right. But I wanted to note that Leone made a trade. I think he's in a dynasty league where he managed it with Davis Maddock, and they actually traded Deshaun Watson for Joe Burrow straight up. Mm-hmm. I wanted to point that out to the listeners. I thought that was a pretty interesting trade.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously we're very high on Burrow going forward. The only thing I would say is that, we're banging on the Texans. The thing is, everybody's banging on the Texans. I mean, 4.5 on a 17 game season is extraordinarily low. And so the market is on it. We're not like uncovering anything new here. So it's really, really low. 4.5. It feels like the Watson stuff is baked in pretty hard to me already. But let's get to one that I am on, that Evan is on also. The third one here for Evan that I've also taken is Vikings over 8.5 wins. It's up to -125 now. And before Evan goes here, I'll just make my quick little case here on the Vikings. They were 4th in yards per play last year on offense. Well, I mean, 4th in the entire league, yards per play on offense. 27th in yards per play allowed. I mean, that's just not Mike Zimmer, man. That is not Mike Zimmer defense to be 27th in yards per play allowed. And he says, listen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend $41 million guaranteed on the defensive side of the football alone in free agency. Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, Xavier Woods. I think that the Vikings defense will be very, very much improved, and that'll make a big difference in their wins. Obviously, the market always hates Kirk Cousins. I think that he's still fine, if not above average. So yeah, I think Vikings over 8.5. You have to lay -125 on DraftKings at least. And you guys can shop more to try to find better lines, but DraftKings have to lay -125. So that's my big thing on the Vikings. Just a much improved defense thanks to Mike Zimmer, thanks to who they've added. Evan, if you have anything else to add on Vikings over 8.5.
Yeah, and they've got a ton of draft picks too. I think they've got 8 in the top 150 or something like that. They're loaded up in this draft, so they can add a lot of talent. And they've been a pretty good drafting team under Rick Spielman. When you have continuity in the front office for that long, Rick Spielman knows what he wants, and he knows how to work with Mike Zimmer. And Clint Kubiak is the son of Gary Kubiak, and they're all going to be on the same page. So that's going to give them an advantage, especially in a draft like this where the college player. Some college players sat out last season. There's going to be a lot less information. There's no combine, but these guys are going to be on the same page, and I think that will give them an advantage in the draft. You can bet them on DraftKings Sportsbook, yes, to make the playoffs at plus 154. I think that's really interesting because that's a very profitable odds, and also like half the league makes the playoffs now. 28 teams or 14 teams make the playoffs, 14 out of 32. The Bears didn't get better. The Packers didn't get better. The Packers we probably still expect them to be good, but are they going to be as good as last year? I don't know about that. We expect the Lions to be terrible. So you talked me into this, and then I went back and looked more into it, and I love it. I bet like the Vikings to make the playoffs. I bet the over on 8.5. So I'm right there with you.
Raybon, 3 of us on Vikings overs this year.
Yeah, that's the way I lean as well. I think they're closer to a winning team than a losing team. I do like those, 6 picks in the 3rd and 4th round. They're going to know what to do with those. I do like those 4 games against Detroit and Chicago. I think they can actually sweep those. They play Cincy, they play Carolina. So there's definitely winnable games on the schedule. They have some road games against the Chargers, Arizona, kind of some middling teams that I think they can win as well. And Kirk Cousins threw 35 touchdown passes last year. Justin Jefferson was a 1,400-yard receiver. So they have explosiveness on the offense, and I think I agree. I think Zimmer will get the defense back to where we expect it.
I also took them to win the NFC North plus 400. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these Packers fades, I agree with you. The Packers odds are inflated based on everybody thinking they can repeat what they did last year. If you think that they can, you can get some really good numbers in NFC North stuff. Okay. Let's go to Raybon's selections. I think we're going to have some dispute here on this first one. Raybon is on Titans under 9.5. Do have to lay minus 150 on DK Sportsbook. Raybon, go ahead on Titans under 9.5 while you're on that.
Yeah, so the Tennessee Titans are a team that I think is hurt by this schedule. First of all, their extra game is against the New Orleans Saints. It's at home, but that's never going to be easy. Going against New Orleans. I don't think the team really got better in the offseason. They lose Corey Davis. They lose Jonnu Smith. More importantly, they lose Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator. I think he was instrumental to that play action pass game and Ryan Tannehill's success. And I'm a little bit worried about them carrying it over. We saw the Titans, defense fall off without Pease, over these last couple of years. And I'm just worried, what's going to happen with another coordinator leaving, this time on the offensive side of the ball. You look at the schedule. There are not many gimmies. I mean, you have Houston and Jacksonville 4 times, and you have the Jets on the road. But besides that, it's, Indy, KC, Buffalo, San Francisco, New Orleans, Miami, Rams, Seattle, New England, Pittsburgh, Arizona. I mean, there are just a lot of games that they can lose. And this was a team, even though they finished 11-5 and broke the streak of 9-7s, their Pythagorean win total was only 9.1. So they outperformed by almost 2 wins. That was one of the highest in the league. They were 7-2 in one score games. And I just think this is kind of profiling as a top heavy team. I don't really think they added a lot of depth. I think, something happens to Derrick Henry, and let's be real. I mean, running backs get that type of workload, it's sooner or later. We saw it happen to McCaffrey last year. I think this team's in big trouble, especially without Arthur Smith. So just, the schedule, the extra game against New Orleans, the lack of depth, all point me toward this under here.
All right. Evan, the retort, note that you can get over plus 123. So obviously $100 win 123 if you take Titans over 9.5.
Well, we do have a set of commandments here at Establish the Run, and atop the commandments is thou shalt not fade the big dog. So you come on our show, Raybon, you fade the big dog. We're going to have words. Okay. You made a lot of good points. I don't think the Saints are going to be very good. I'm really down on the Saints. Actually, I took them to miss the playoffs at minus 106. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to have problems at quarterback. They do still have a great offensive line. Their defense is really talented, although it seems like the first half of the season it underachieves every single year and then finds its way down the stretch. But I really think that the the quality of offense is going to take a significant downturn going to Taysom Hill / Jameis Winston. The Titans 9.5 just isn't that much. And we're getting plus money on the over at plus 123. I don't like the negative juice there at minus 150 for the under. You mentioned the schedule, and you did make good points there, but I think that the in-division schedule actually got easier. The Colts, I think, they're just a wild card with Carson Wentz. I mean, and they're sort of incentivized due to the way that his contract, or the way that trade worked out, to sit him if they are not successful. And if they're not successful, then that'll be good for the Titans. The Jaguars, although I kind of like them to be like, spunky on offense, I don't think they're going to win a ton of games. And then Houston is just an utter disaster. So I hear you. I think you made a good argument. I'm going to stick with the over with the plus money at 9.5 wins with Tennessee.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of efficiency stuff baked in, right? Like a lot of these advanced stats and stuff that Raybon's talking about is saying, hey, can they keep up this efficiency, the close games and stuff like that? I mean, this is what the Titans do. Ryan Tannehill is extremely, extremely efficient on low volume. So I like the Titans. I thought this line was about right. I don't really have a play here on either side. I think it comes down to who you think's better, the Colts or the Titans. I mean, that's a lot of it. And I know Silva's on Colts to miss the playoffs at plus 180. Odds to win the AFC South right now, Titans are plus 130. Colts are plus 100. Just quickly, Raybon, who do you think is better between the Titans and the Colts?
I think the Colts are better at this point. I'm just really concerned about the Titans roster construction at this point. Again, yeah. I think, you have to expect, and listen, I've been right there with like Ryan Tannehill over 1.5 touchdowns every week on props. You're talking about losing Corey Davis, who became one of the most efficient receivers in the league. You're talking about losing Jonnu Smith. You're replacing him, you're replacing Davis with Josh Reynolds, who's, kind of probably a bottom 30th percentile type of wide receiver. Like, I just think that it's very fragile. And I think there is something to the fact that books are giving you this major juice to go over 9.5 for a team that won 11 games last year. And I don't like the Bud Dupree signing either. I think they paid a little too much. They just kind of needed a pass rusher. And, he's been kind of very inconsistent. Like, I just don't like the roster construction for Tennessee. So I'm sticking with the under here.
I agree. It's fragile. I mean, look, Derrick Henry goes down. We're talking about Darrington Evans, Ryan Tannehill goes down. It's over. AJ Brown goes down.
Right. Yeah.
Like they have no insulation behind him at receiver. Ferkser. I mean, they're relying on Ferkser right now.
And if Dupree's not healthy, I mean, they still don't have a pass rush.
Right.
Depending on what they do in the drafts. But
it is fragile.
I do agree.
I don't want to be taking anything at minus 150. For a team like you're just hoping that they go 8-9 or worse. Like.
Well, they could go 9-8.
9-8. Right, yeah.
No, I was gonna say, I think if you do like the Titans, I almost think you just take that. What do you get? Like you said, you get like 130, 135 juice on the division.
Yeah.
I would if there's higher juice on that, I probably just go with the upside play there because I do think it is kind of a volatile, fragile situation where they could just benefit from the division sucking, but. I don't think I want the over on a straight up win.
No, I think that's a great point. I think
all right.
I think you're right.
Let's go to the AFC West. Chris is on the Raiders under 7.5 minus 110. Raiders did win 8 games last year. I actually thought Carr played for him pretty well last year, but the offseason, I mean, it's just been an absolute mess in my opinion. So I kind of lean under here too, but I'm curious what Raybon is thinking. 7.5 under minus 110 on the Raiders.
Yeah, I got to go under with this team. I mean, you look at the offseason and they broke up the offensive line with Jackson and Trent Brown leaving and of course Rodney Hudson. Nelson Aguilar even, I mean, he was an extremely efficient receiver for them. I don't know if they replaced that production with the declining John Brown and Willie Snead kind of in that same boat. Kenyon Drake, a little bit more of a luxury signing, I thought. You know, and then
that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, that's the worst. You could have said the worst signing of the entire offseason, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's declined. I'm a Kenyon Drake fan, but he declined precipitously last season. I think, you know, the workload starting to catch up to him a little, but even Ngakoue, I think is a bit of a risk. He's kind of been in decline. He's still, you know, on the, you know, he's clearly a good player, but kind of been declining these last 4 years. I believe his PFF grade has gone down each of the last four. And then I just look at, you know, they had 7.1 Pythagorean wins, so they outperformed by about a win. And, you know, Derek Carr is still not a guy that can move around. I just look at this receiving core. I mean, I see Darren Waller. He's stayed healthy the last 2 seasons. That's not a guarantee. You know, they've got, you know, and this defense, I just don't trust that they'll be able to remedy this defense. In the draft, you know, they have a couple of picks in the thirds, 79 and 80, but you can't really trust this team to draft particularly great. And I just don't think there's enough of a defensive turnaround. I think the Chargers will be better. I like what the Broncos did on, you know, in the secondary. They're going to be scrappy. And so there's really no gimmies in the division. You play the Chiefs twice. And then, you know, this is just a middling team with no, and I think Carr, I mean, that might be he might have peaked. That might be go down as his best year last year. I'm not necessarily counting on him to be quite as good, especially with this receiving core. So, and Henry Ruggs has been a bust so far. So yeah, just not feeling the Raiders.
Yeah. I mean, in-house personnel evaluation for them, I mean, seems like a mess. They took Josh Jacobs in the first round, then they signed Kenyon Drake to first round money. They take Henry Ruggs. What was he, like the 12th pick or something like that? And then he looks like he's not the guy, although I don't want to write him off after 1 year, but he certainly doesn't fit too well with Derek Carr. So yeah, I mean, you know, then they blow up their offensive line. This seems like a mess to me. I agree with you. I think under 7.5 makes a lot of sense. Evan, what do you think?
I had it as a pass just because it's a 17-game season. And we're talking about, you know, 7.5 wins, and it just feels like nothing, you know. But I would, you know, to highlight one point that Raybon made, I think that every other team in the division is going to be better than they were last year, and I think the Raiders are going to be worse than they were last year. I think the Broncos have a chance to take a legitimate leap. I'm on their over. I think their win total is at 7.5. I like their over. Chargers, you know, I've been on them as like a Super Bowl long shot. And then, I mean, the Chiefs can be healthier than they were last year. And so I think all those teams in the division can be better. And I think the Raiders are going to be worse. They are relying on Tom Cable's internal in-house evaluation big time here to replace all these veterans that they parted with. And that's quite a leap of faith for an offensive line coach who has had very little success over a large sample size in the NFL.
All right, let's go back to the AFC South. Raybon is on Jaguars under 6.5. It's around -120, -121. We know they're going to have Trevor Lawrence under center. We know they're getting Urban Meyer as their new head coach. Sounds like you're still skeptical, Raybon. Go ahead on Jaguars under 6.5.
Yeah, and I think I like the Jaguars long term. I think I like some of the ads that they made in the offseason, but we're talking about a 1-15 team. It's just a huge jump. You know, since 2000, college coaches have added about 3 wins, about 18% to the winning percentage, but this is a 1-15 team. So even if you account for that jump, it takes them to about 4. You know, they play a couple games against Houston. Those should be winnable. But, you know, let's remember, this is a new system, a lot of new players, even though the roster is not going to be as bad as last year, but new players. You know, we saw in the first year, the team that drafted Kyler goes 5-10-1. Joe Burrow goes 2-7-1 before going down. I mean, even with Lawrence being what he's cracked up to be, even with this team headed in the right direction long term, you're talking about a team going from 1-15 to now 7-10. You know, to win 7 games. I just think that's a lot, even in this division. The numbers just, you know, back it up. Even if you project a huge jump, it's just really tough to get them to 7 wins for me. So this is a team I think still probably a year away. I think this is a little bit aggressive But I'm hoping, honestly, that they have a good draft. And I think it might even get to 7 because, I mean, it does seem like there's some hype on there for it even to open at 6.5. So I'll be looking out for that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, a lot of this is going to come down to your evaluation on Trevor Lawrence. Evan, go ahead on Jaguars. I believe you have a disagreement here with Raybon.
Yeah, not too hard. I think that, though, if I was going to bet the Jaguars, which I probably won't at all, I read Raybon's write-up on this too. It was excellent. And, if I was going to bet it, I'd probably try to still chase the plus money at plus 100. I mean, you're not getting a lot there, but over 6.5 wins at plus 100. This is a team that is loaded up with draft picks, man. 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, number 65. I think that's what the first pick in the third round.
Third, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then 2 fourths and 2 fifths. So they're going to add some serious talent in the draft. They're going to be really, really young. I think that Trevor Lawrence comes in and elevates everybody around him, though. I think the offensive line looks better. I think the offensive line has had talent for a couple of years now. They just haven't had really a quarterback that, quarterback and offensive line players are so like symbiotic, or they should be. And I think Trevor Lawrence makes the offensive line look better. I think he makes DJ Sharp look better right away. But yeah, I think it's probably a pass for me.
All right, let's get to one. I think actually all 3 of us agree. Seahawks over 9.5 minus 110. I thought the Seahawks were the best team in the division last year. I think, again, I think the Rams are going to be very good, but I still prefer the Seahawks to the 49ers. Obviously, we're going to have some quarterback change there. But Raybon, I know you're on Seahawks over 9.5. Go ahead on it.
Yeah, this really comes down to, if you think the Seahawks, as constructed, can win 10 games, which I do, you take this because they don't have many draft picks. I believe they only have 56, 129, and then 250, so a 2, 4, and a 7. But you look at what they did in the offseason. They add Gabe Jackson to the offensive line. So now, all of a sudden, you look up and you have Brown, Jackson, Pochett, Lewis, Shell. All 5 of those guys finished above average in Pro Football Focus's pass blocking efficiency last year. So, Russell Wilson may actually have a decent O-line. And then I also think they made it count on defense as well. They signed, Kerry Hyder. That should improve the pass rush. Achilleo Weatherspoon was one of the better cornerbacks in the league, 14th out of 137 qualifiers in yards per snap allowed, according to Pro Football Focus. So, I would like to see them add, one more pass catcher. It is a little top heavy with Lockett, Metcalf, but Gerald Everett could be a good addition for them. Certainly, better than the ghost of Greg Olsen. But I just think this roster, even right now, because I don't expect them to do much in the draft. So, maybe this hits 9 if, they kind of have a forgettable draft, which they will. But every year, the Seahawks do this with Wilson. 10 plus wins in 8 of 9 years with Wilson in a 16-game schedule. Now you get an extra game to get there. 8 of 9 years, they have double-digit wins, man. And, I like the roster. They might have a good O-line. Give me Seattle over 9.5.
Yeah. I like Russ too. I especially like how he has sex like literally one time, then he's on the cover of like GQ, like making love to Ciara and stuff like that. But anyways, I want to bet on Russ. Obviously he's going to be handcuffed this year by the system. They literally got rid of Brian Schottenheimer so they could handcuff Russ further in terms of how much they're going to let him cook. That said, he's found ways to win games even despite this. And so I want to be high on Russ here. Evan, anything else to add on Seattle?
Well, I think that sort of narrative that you just pointed out, the fact that they wanted to handcuff Russ, I think that was, I wonder if we kind of made too much of a big of a deal of that, because their actions suggest that they're not necessarily, going back to ground and pound. The acquisition of Gabe Jackson, he's always been an excellent pass blocking. He's like 350, but he's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. They went out and they signed Gerald Everett. They gave Tyler Lockett an extension. I think that there might be more of a compromise here than maybe we foresaw in February, when there was rhetoric going back and forth and Russ was kind of, complaining. Now Russ is on board, he's tweeting positive things about the Seahawks. And, I I like this Shane Waldron dude too, who's coming from under Sean McVay. Clearly they had been impressed by him. They play in the same division. I don't know. I think that there might be more compromise here. And also, I know running backs don't matter, but Chris Carson was a really good re-signing, I think, by them. He can catch passes, and these other guys, Rashad Penny has never shown that, even going back to college. These other guys, you don't want DJ Dallas and Travis Homer in the game, but you do want Chris Carson in the game. And I like that. It's sort of like, it was almost like that was a compromise between the front office and the coaching staff. The front office has been trying to get rid of Chris Carson for years. But the coaching staff absolutely loves Chris Carson. So I actually think things are starting to come together with Seattle. I think that this might be my favorite over bet for Seattle here on the over on their win total.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say about the let Russ cook stuff is that last year I was promised they would let Russ cook more. I'm up to my eyeballs in Russ stacks, Russ with Lockett and Metcalf and all these different combos. And then they come out, Russ is having a literal MVP year. Things go sideways a little bit. He starts turning the ball over. He has a couple bad games. Next thing I know, they don't even let him throw the ball. And now my Russ stacks are just completely dead. And so I don't know, man. I'm optimistic that they'll let him cook, but I should say I'm hopeful. I'm not optimistic still. I hear what you're saying, though. They did give Lockett a contract. They did get Everett, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
And let's not forget, they also, down the stretch, their defense was one of the best in the league. 17-17-3, 15-9, 23 for the last 6 regular season games. So they can play D, and they'll probably be healthier. They had horrible injury luck on defense last year.
Yeah. Okay, last one from Raybon here is a fresh one in the light of the Sam Darnold trade. Panthers under 7.5 minus 110. Obviously, this line's been jumping around a little bit in the wake of the news. Sam Darnold, we do expect to be the starter ahead of Teddy Bridgewater, if they even keep him ahead of PJ Walker. Raybon, talk Panthers for us.
I was leaning this way before the Darnold trade, but I love the under with the Darnold trade because it just kind of almost certainly guarantees that they're going to have some middling or worse quarterback starting for them. And I just don't I like what they did with acquiring Perriman and Reddick, but let's not forget, linebacker, in terms of, the hierarchy of impact for NFL positions, linebacker is not necessarily high on the list. So I think they're going to try to play, this game manager style. I think, it's going to, and they're also, I think, going to be dependent on, a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who wasn't healthy last year. I think it's concerning that, Bridgewater was supposed to be the future, and, Joe Brady, does some good things with him, but ultimately they're like, nah, we don't want this guy. And if they're going to give Darnold starts, that's a downgrade. Darnold's 13-25 in his career. He's been regressing each of the past 3 seasons. His QBR has dipped. He averages just 6.6 yards per attempt. I think it's good for Robbie Anderson. I think they, that's the one thing, for fantasy, but I like that if this, I think they were angling to get Watson, and they had this is kind of the plan B. And I just, they have the 8th pick in the draft. Okay. 39, 73, 113. I just don't see this team kind of getting over the hump. I think they're a very middling, below average team in a division where you got to play the Bucks. You got to play the Saints, who I still think will be pretty good. The Falcons are, I think, going to be better than the Panthers. So, Darnold's 13-25. Bridgewater was 4-11 last year. They did lose a lot of one-score games, but I just don't see many needle movers for this franchise right now.
Yeah, I think the point about them striking out on all their quarterback options is a good one. I think the counter argument to what you're saying is that this situation for Sam Darnold is so much better than what he had with the Jets. He's going to have Christian McCaffrey, who's coming back healthy. He has DJ Moore. He has Robbie Anderson. Whereas with the Jets, my God, just getting away from Adam Gase, I think, will be a big benefit to him. So I'm not ready to say that Darnold is definitely worse than Teddy Bridgewater. You could be right. He could be worse. Or the same, I'm not ready to definitively say yet that Darnold is worse than Bridgewater. Evan, where do you come in on Panthers under 7.5?
Yeah, I think if I was going to make a bet on this, and I probably wouldn't because it did not stick out to me on the sheet, but I'd probably go with Raybon and take the under on 7.5. Man, sad Darnold, I mean, it's really been sad what we've seen him go through over the past 3 years. And I just wonder if his confidence is wrecked. And I think the confidence is so critical at a position where you touch the ball on every play. And, you got to be the leader of men. And I think he's going to struggle. Probably. I mean, I love the playmakers around him, man. And I love getting him back with Robbie. I think that Joe Douglas has done a good job as the Jets GM. I think his biggest mistake was letting Robbie Anderson go and forcing, Darnold to have to try to form a rapport on the fly with, guys he'd never thrown a ball to. So, but I don't know. I mean, Darnold has just not shown enough. And as Raybon said, he's been regressing. They still have a lot of work to do on their offensive line. I think he's a guy that can get absolutely flustered when under pressure. He's been inaccurate. There have been times during his career where I thought he had like a chance to be a star. But man, I'm losing faith in that ever happening, on a rapid basis over the past, 18 months.
All right. Let's run through some of mine here that I like. A lot of them are NFC East centric. First one is going to be Giants over 7.5 -110. If you guys remember, the Giants started last year 1-7. After that, they went 5-3, and they didn't have many impressive wins, but they did have wins over Washington, over Philly, Seattle, Dallas. But I think most importantly, I mean, the defense was truly excellent down the stretch. Now they add Adoree Jackson. They bring back Leonard Williams on a $63 million deal. They add Kenny Golladay. They get Saquon Barkley back. They bring in Kyle Rudolph. Like, the offensive line can't get much worse. I expect them to address it in the draft. I think things are looking up for the Giants. Now, I hate putting money behind Jason Garrett, obviously. But man, 7 is really, really low. And so I think that the Eagles are a bit overrated in the markets. I think Dallas is a bit overrated in the markets. And so you start to see the Giants.
Whoa. The Eagles are at 6.5 in the market.
We'll talk about that.
Overrated.
We'll talk about that one next. Yeah. Okay. So Raybon is sitting here in what looks like a Lawrence Taylor throwback, a Giants hat. He's coming to us from New York City. Raybon, am I crazy here on Giants over 7 with ease?
You're not crazy, but I'm gonna have to go against the outfit. And if I had to pick, I would go under. I mean, I do like what they did. I think even the Golladay signing is underrated because it helps. Now you have Slayton not having to be a number one. You have Shepard not having to play outside, and you can kind of let with Barkley back, Ingram, Shepard, and Slayton be those like supercharged role players. But I'm really worried about their offensive line. And you have a team that has all the ingredients. You have the coach, you have the defense, you have the skill players. But when your two holes are offensive line and quarterback, that just worries me because I do think that, the Giants could easily, lose both games to Philly, both games to Washington, and both games to Dallas. Like, it's not out of the question. It's just a team that, you look at Daniel Jones, he's 3-9 rookie year, 5-9 last year, 8-18. It's just not a team that I want to put money on. I'll put it that like 7. They'll probably get the push. It's probably about right, but gun to my head, I'm not betting on the over on a team with a hole at quarterback and a horrid offensive line.
Go ahead, Evan. So all those text messages you sent me, Raybon, celebrating Danny Dimes, you're deleting all those or what?
Yeah. It like when he fell down on that 80-yard touchdown run, like it was over. Like it's like this is like I can't get behind like people betting on Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones. Like these are just not the dudes. Like it's like, and like Jones, listen, he should be a better fantasy quarterback, but he was hideous even in that aspect last year. Yeah. We'll see what happens with the skill players. But again, it's the O-line. Like, I think they're still a piece short. I would have liked to see them, instead of maybe the Rudolph signing, which I think was a little bit of a luxury. I think they could have gotten by with like a Caden Smith or somebody. But like, I would have liked to see them address the O-line because, I mean, everyone you project to start is pretty much like bottom 10th percentile in pass block efficiency. I mean, it's scary.
If they pile into offensive line on the draft, are you going to change your tune?
I don't know, because it's still David Gettleman doing the piling, right? So it's like it's not like that doesn't automatically mean those guys work. And then like the offensive line was like the one issue Joe Judge he's great. I think he's a great coach, but his one issue was like O-line, and he like fired a guy, and it's just it just worries me, when you have those two holes. So yeah, I would go under with force, but I think that's right at 7.
Evan, any Giants takes?
No, I mean, I just, I was so mean to them for so long. I started to feel bad. So I don't really rip on the Giants at all anymore. And I do think that they had a good offseason too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm worried about Daniel Dimes. I'm concerned about Daniel Dimes. From a fantasy standpoint, as you mentioned, like, where did he score? Like he had like 4 30-point games or something.
As a rookie, yeah. In 12 starts, yeah.
Right. And then Jason Garrett gets a hold of him. And
0.
he does nothing. I don't, again, and I've said this multiple times, like, I don't understand how there was never any discussion of moving on from Jason Garrett. Like, that wasn't even a consideration, that was disappointing to me.
I do think some of that is it's a little unfair to Garrett. I think, in fantasy, and I talk about this a lot, and I still don't think people quite grasp it as much as they should. It's very important in DFS, but even in redraft, it's like defenses are what's going to separate a lot of the quarterbacks. Like outside of Mahomes and a few other guys, like it's going to come down to defense. And the real difference between Daniel Jones and 4 30-point games as a rookie and last year was that the defense did make strides last year, and they were really stingy. And I think that's just not a good, and I think the defense is going to be even better. And so that's just not a good combination for fantasy when you have a middling to low end quarterback with a above average to good defense. It's going to, and they play at a slow pace. They just try to slow pace.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One thing that he showed as a rookie though, is that, some flashes of having a vertical passing game.
Yeah.
And then that was non-existent last year. Now they have Kenny Golladay, and we have seen that wide receivers can elevate the play of their quarterbacks. So, and hey, go look at, Matthew Stafford's splits with and without Kenny Golladay. So I don't know. There's your room for optimism.
It comes down to the O-line. If they can block for those deep shots.
I refuse to let you try to let Jason Garrett off the hook here. As a rookie, he had almost the same amount of attempts. As a rookie, he had 24 touchdowns. He had played 14 games last year with Jason Garrett, 11 touchdown passes in 14 games in today's NFL. I mean, that is beyond brutal. And so, it's just, he had almost the same amount of attempts, and I understand the defense is good. I agree with you. It's not great for game environment, but gosh, I mean, I gotta leave the blame on Garrett. I refuse to give up.
Okay, so you have bad quarterback, bad O-line, bad coordinator. Under.
Oh my God. Okay, let's move on. Eagles. Yeah. So I think Evan and I have a bit of a disagreement here. Silva's on the Eagles to make the playoffs at plus 275. I think that's a pretty good price. I don't necessarily disagree there. In terms of their win total, though, you can get under 6.5 at plus 110. And I don't think they're punting the season totally, but they're certainly in rebuild mode. And Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to be awesome in fantasy. In real life, I have major question marks still about Jalen Hurts. Now, what I will say is the offensive line could be a real boost this year. Get Lane Johnson back, Brandon Brooks back, Isaac Seumalo back, and maybe Travis Kelce or Jason Kelce can hang on. So I think OL is a strength, but man, quarterback I have concern about in real life. Playmakers in the pass game I have concern about. Annually brutal secondary, and they gave up the number 6 pick. They moved back. They kicked the can again. Now they're back to number 12. They're going to miss out on Jamar Chase or some of these other, Kyle Pitts, whatever front line playmaker they wanted. So I don't see a lot of help around Jalen Hurts for them to win 7 games. I think is going to be difficult. I know Evan disagrees. Go ahead on the Eagles, Evan.
Yeah, actually, I think that I'm not as much on the over 6.5 as I am on to win the division at plus 500, just because the rest of the division isn't very good. And 5-1, in a 4-team division, it's just like basic math. I think that they're a pretty good bet at that price. And then plus 275. I mean, if they win the division, then I would just bet both of those.
Yeah.
And then I've taken Jalen Hurts MVP at 66-1. It's probably crazy, but I like to do a couple crazy things in the MVP market every year. Sometimes they'll work, sometimes they won't. Last year, the Eagles 5 of their losses came in 1-score games. They also had a tie. So they should experience some positive regression there. I think they've got lots of young talent. I think that Dallas Goedert and Jalen Reagor and Hightower and Quez Watkins and Fulham, I think that's not nothing.
No.
And then I think that they also add a pass catcher at number 12. And then defensively, their secondary has been bad, but I really like the signing of Anthony Harris, who's another one of these undrafted guys. These guys get so disrespected in the NFL. I mean, he was the Vikings franchise player this past year. He hits the open market, gets like a 1 year. The Eagles got him up for 1 year, $4 million. I really like that addition. And then the O-line. I mean, the O-line can be like legit real good.
Yeah.
So I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a big year. We're going to love him in fantasy. At least we can all agree on that.
For sure. And I agree with you on the offensive line. I disagree with you that the playmakers actually, like, I don't really like any of those guys. And it's so funny to me. Like,
you don't like Dallas Goedert, man?
No, I like Goddard. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's one
Miles
thing funny
Sanders, Jalen Reagor. No.
Yeah. The thing about Reagor, like here in Philly, I mean, everybody wanted Justin Jefferson. The entire city wanted Justin Jefferson. They were furious when they took Jalen Reagor. And for like the first time in history, like the entire city was right. They should have taken Justin Jefferson over Jalen Reagor, or at least it looks that way. I mean, pretty easily so far. But anyways, we haven't gotten Raybon's take yet on the Eagles. What do you see out of Hurts last year, Raybon, and what do you think about them at 6.5 plus money on the under?
Yeah, I think this is an over team. Initially I'm like, okay, the Eagles, they may struggle, but I'm looking at the schedule. They have tough home games against Tampa Bay, KC, San Fran, New Orleans. But outside of those games, they have a lot of winnable games. I mean, you have the Giants, the Chargers, Giants on the road, Jets, Lions, Panthers, Broncos, Raiders, Falcons, a lot of middling teams. And remember, this is a team that they went 4-11-1 last year, but their Pythagorean win total was 5.9. So they more like a 6-win team. They lost to Dwayne Haskins. They gave up a huge comeback in week 1, and then they punted the week 17 game against Washington. So, I mean, this is a team that even last year, I think they were better than their record. I do have concerns about receiver, but let's also remember like that Doug Peterson scheme mixed with Carson Wentz was just like mixed with like, Alshon Jeffrey holding on. And it was just like the worst possible thing that could have happened for them. So I think now with an offseason for, to kind of build around Hurts and Reagor to, develop a little bit, I don't think it's going to be as bad. Just scheme wise, you have Nick Sirianni coming in. And he's, as far as I know, a pretty good offensive mind. So I think that this team could make a big improvement. And this is a team that, I mean, I look, I talk about the Giants. They could go, 1-5 or 0-6 against the division. I could see the Eagles going, 4-2, 5-1 in the division. I could see them beating Detroit, Carolina on the road, Denver. I just see too many ways for this team to get to 7.
Now I'm getting excited.
I see too many ways for the team to get to 7. I think, and then they do still, even though, they're back down to 12, they have 2 picks in the 3rd round, 70 and 84. They have 3 in the 6th. So a lot of draft picks. I just think this team is going to be, it's going to still be middling, but I think it's going to be good enough. And there is that upside. So I do like the upside bets because this is like a Lamar Jackson type situation for Jalen Hurts, where it's like a guy can't really throw that well, solid organization around him. You can't they're not terrible. Like I like the Eagles. I like the Eagles.
Man, it's preaching, man. Oh, that was awesome. That was awesome. Yo, make sure producer Luke cut that up, okay?
Oh, and by the way, they got the key to unlocking Jalen Hurts. Joe Flacco backing him up.
If Joe Flacco gets in there,
even Lamar Jackson under Flacco's tutelage.
Unbelievable. All right.
I did so well for Drew Lock, but it's all right.
Last NFC East team. Evan and I have talked about this ad nauseum, Raybon. I'm actually kind of tired talking about how good I think Washington football team is going to be. Obviously, the market is on it too. It's got up to minus 134 to go over 8. I still don't mind laying that wood on Washington football team. They were 4th in yards per play allowed last year, behind only Rams, Steelers, Saints. Now they add William Jackson on a $42 million deal. Obviously on offense, massive upgrade at quarterback. Massive upgrade opposite Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. You add Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, Adam Humphries, whatever, for some snaps in the slot. They also have the 19th overall pick. They have 4 picks in the top 82. I mean, I don't see how this team doesn't win 8 games. I really think they're going to be much better. And hopefully you guys got some of that 4-1 or plus 350 or plus 375, whatever you could get on Washington to win the division, because I really like that as well. It's down to plus 275 now. Obviously, market is starting to wake up to the Washington football team. But Evan and I have talked about this on like at least 4 different podcasts now. Raybon, are you with us on our love for the Washington football team?
Yeah, and this is kind of why the Giants just are by default the team I'm down on, because I do think Washington is probably the best team in the NFC East. Extra game at Buffalo hurts, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, is a major upgrade at quarterback. You mentioned, Jackson, Samuel. That goes a long way toward fixing that offense. And with this kind of defense, as dangerous as it is, they just need a competent offense. And I think they have that now with upside to boot. I mean, Gibson, high upside guy, McLaurin, even Logan Thomas at tight end, kind of showing some stuff there. So I like this team all the way around. You still got Riverboat Ron, YOLOing it out there. So, I think he gives him a little bit of an edge as well. So I do like this Washington team, and I wouldn't be scared to bet the juice, even if it goes to like minus 150, because you're essentially betting for them to be a winning team against then a losing team. And I think this is a winning team this year. So, I would take that. Well, it's still at 8, because once it gets to 8.5, you don't get that push if something goes wrong. But I think 8 is more like the floor for them this year.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Last 2 we're going to hit here. AFC East, I think Dolphins over 9 at minus 121. Silva's also on Dolphins to win the AFC East at plus 350. I think the market is just saying that they don't know about Tua, or they think Tua sucks. And that's to me, the only explanation. I mean, this team won 10 games last year. They choked so bad in week 17 against Buffalo's backups to miss the playoffs, but the Dolphins add Will Fuller. They have 4 picks in the top 50, including 2 first rounders, number 6 and number 18, and you get a full offseason for Tua. Like, I'm not ready to leave Tua for dead yet. It feels like the market is either like, we don't know about Tua, so we're going to keep their market intact, instead of being like, hey, we think Tua at least has a chance. So I think there's upside here. If Tua's good, I mean, they're going to smash this, in my opinion, over 9 at minus 121. Any thoughts on the Dolphins, Raybon?
Yeah, I think their schedule kind of sets up for them to hit the over. They play the Jets twice, Houston, Jacksonville, Carolina, Vegas, Giants, Falcons. So that they have some games in there. If they can get a couple, especially at home in a division, I think they're well on their way. The one concern I have about this team is offensive line. I think that the offensive line is a major question mark. And, again, it's, combined with, we don't truly know how good Tua is going to be. I think he wasn't quite as good as I wanted him to be last year, as I thought he was going to be, but certainly not, there's no, I think the upside is still there. So this is a lean over for me as well. But the O-line is just a concern.
Sure. I don't think anybody saw what they wanted to see out of Tua last year. It doesn't mean that he's drawing dead. Evan, what do you think about the Dolphins? I know you're on, again, to win the AFC East at plus 350. And I like that too, because you'll see on the next one that I have here, I'm on Patriots unders, as I've been for, since the Cam Newton era. So anyways, go ahead, Evan, on Dolphins.
Yeah. And, a lot of people thought going into last year that Tua, just like the Dolphins needed to sit him for the entire season because he was coming off of that hip problem. Quarterbacks, I know that this is a different injury, but a lot of quarterbacks, if you read about them, when they're coming off of their ACLs, they just torn ACLs, they don't feel as confident and comfortable in their lower body. And their lower body is critical at the quarterback position, as, Bill Walsh has very famously outlined. So I think that could have played a role in Tua kind of struggling as a rookie, not being prepared, having an offensive coordinator that was, he's boys with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Shane Gailey was boys with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he probably wasn't necessarily devoting a lot of time to Tua. And then when he jumped in there, I mean, they didn't have the best weapons in Miami. Preston Williams was coming off the ACL. He was not his self last year. Devontae Parker battled kind of injuries on and off throughout the season. They were breaking in a new offensive line. I think that Tua is a guy that I would say that most people are down on him right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's understandable why, but it's based on a very small sample size in a not very fair circumstance to which he was inserted. I mean, they were pulling him out of games.
Yeah.
That's not how you handle a rookie quarterback. I remember Rap Sheet tweeting that the Dolphins, you've never seen a team, an organization handle a rookie quarterback as well as the Dolphins have this year. After they pulled him in the fourth quarter to insert Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I was like, the Dolphins didn't want to do this. The Dolphins did not want this to go like how it went. And Rap Sheet he's a good guy, and he's trying to be nice, but I think he was wrong in that instance. And I think that adding Will Fuller, who we have seen him elevate the play of Deshaun Watson, Devontae Parker at 100%. Maybe they get Kyle Pitts at, the motherfucking Mackey Award winner at number 6 overall. And Gesicki comes back and he's that number 2. And they've got Lynn Bowden coming through. They got Albert Wilson. And their offensive line is now a year older. And I think that Tua is a guy that is like a sleeper to have a monster season, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Love it for sure. And one of the reasons that I'm on some of the Dolphins over stuff is so I can more easily be on Patriots under stuff. Patriots under 9.5 is plus 123. They went 7-9 last year. I think they've gotten better, maybe slightly, thanks to Jonnu, thanks to Hunter Henry. But overall, to me, this team looks really easy to defend. I have questions about Cam Newton's shoulder. I don't think Nelson Aguilar is anywhere near a number 1 wideout. Julian Edelman's on his last legs. Kendrick Bourne is just kind of dusty. And so I don't really see them threatening defenses very much. If they're going to win 10 games, which they have to, here it's going to be Cam Newton trying to run through again and score 14 touchdowns with his legs and run for 800, 900 yards. I don't know how sustainable that is. So yeah, I have all the respect in the world for the Patriots organization and Bill Belichick. It's just hard to overcome bad talent. And I think for the last couple of years, his team has had really bad talent. So for me to get plus 123 under 9.5 on the Patriots is something I'm actively looking to do in conjunction with my Dolphins over stuff. Raybon, what do you think about the Patriots?
Yeah, I think the plus money toward the under kind of swings it a little bit for me. I do think there's a chance the Patriots have a dominant defense. I mean, everyone's kind of talking about the offense, but I thought they made some really good moves to kind of shore up the defense. Judon, Van Noy, Hightower back. So Jalen Mills, versatile. I think they're going to be able to defend almost anybody. But you talk about a team and you talk about depth being important. That'll play to the Patriots' favor. But you also are weak at the most important position, and that's quarterback. And I agree. I don't know if Cam Newton makes it through another 15 games like he did last year. And I don't know if they're able to kind of parlay their draft into usable offensive difference-making talent because they really haven't shown that they're able to do that. I mean, they'll get a running back here or there in day 2 maybe, but really have struck out as far as wide receiver, pass catcher. I think is still going to be somewhat of an issue. I think especially with the plus money that this is an under, but it could change depending on the draft because they do have 4 picks in the top, 5 picks in the top, or 6 picks actually in the top 140. They have 3 4th-rounders. So we'll see what they do in the draft. Things could go either way. But as of now, I like the under.
Yeah, there's certainly rumors out there that they could make a play for Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition. Evan, any thoughts on the Patriots as we start to look towards the draft?
They're just typically a pass for me because I hear your argument, Adam, against them, but it's still Bill Belichick. It's still a potentially dominant defense, as Raybon pointed out, and I think their offensive line is going to kick ass.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're trying to like fade the rest of the league. The rest of the league has morphed into they're running out 220-pound linebackers, and the Patriots are going to play 2 tight end like jumbo offense with a kick-ass offensive line and one of the 5 most mobile quarterbacks in the league and an improved cast of weapons. I mean, it was awful last year, and it has at least has a chance to be pretty good this year. So I'm passing here.
Yeah, Obviously, I think the Belichick stuff is baked into the line. Like if they had any other coach, this line would be like 9 or 8.5. I mean, no, without a doubt. And so you're certainly paying a premium to get Bill Belichick, and maybe that's warranted. It's just as you saw last year, you can only overcome so much when you have such poor talent. Okay, we've said it all. We have gone through a ton of teams. This was awesome. Raybon, tell the people where they can find you, what you're working on, et cetera, et cetera.
So I will have a big win totals preview piece out at actionnetwork.com. You can follow me in the Action Network app at Chris Raybon and on Twitter at Chris Raybon. And we'll be doing a podcast, I believe next week. Stucky and I will do a win totals podcast as well. So be on the lookout for that as well.
All right, cool. We'll be back on Thursday with Raybon's coworker, Matt Freeman, to talk NFL draft props as we start to turn our attention to the April 29 NFL draft. Our draft kit is up live right now. Best ball rankings continue to update with the news, updated for Darnold and all that stuff. Draft kit is $34.99. Check that out on the site. For Evan, for Raybon, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.